Hey, warriors. So, have you ever, well, I'm sure you have noticed, but when or how actually something changes in one place and suddenly it starts to change everywhere? Or, how one person breaks a pattern and others seem to follow without being told. Okay? That's not coincidence, that's morphic resonance, which is the idea that patterns don't just live in us individually, they live in fields. And I know that a lot of you know this, okay? I'm just trying to put some info out there for people that are where we were when we started, okay? Um, but when something happens often enough, a behavior, a belief, a way of being, it creates a groove in the collective field. And once that groove exists, it becomes easier for others to follow it. And it's not because they're copying somebody, or it's because that path is already there. This explains why humanity repeats trauma, power cycles, fear cycles, control structures, emotional patterns, things like that. These aren't just learned behaviors, they're field patterns that have been reinforced over centuries. You understand? Um, so people aren't, and I know that this is coming off like people are weak. I'm not saying that whatsoever. What I am saying is that they're walking a well worn energetic path. Okay? Here's the hopeful part though. Every time someone chooses awareness overreaction, breaks a generational pattern, or refuses fear, returns to love, embodies coherence, those kinds of things, or, you know, lives from our truth instead of our conditioning. They don't just change their life, they seed a new pattern into the field. And once a new pattern exists, others can find it much more easily. That's awesome. You know, like I said, I know that a lot of us already know these things, but I'm trying to get some info out. Anyways, I think this is why awakening, doesn't feel so isolated anymore, right? Um, when enough people shift internally, the field reaches a tipping point, if you will, and suddenly people everywhere are saying things like, I don't know why, but I can't do this anymore, or I don't resonate with that life anymore. Something feels different. And they're not imagining it, they're responding to a changing field, right? Um, so observant people, embodied or sensitive people often feel these morphic shifts earlier than others, okay? And it's not because we're special, but it's because we're tuned in, plain and simple. We notice when old patterns weaken, um, new ones start forming, old stories that start losing their grip, things like that. And it can feel disorienting at first, almost like, you're between worlds. Okay. Here's something important. really, honestly, it's really, really important. When a pattern is losing dominance, it doesn't fade quiet. You know what I mean? It gets loud, more extreme, more chaotic. And it's not because it's winning, it's because it's trying to survive. Hence the chaos lately in the world, you know? Um but these patterns, they behave like organisms. They resist extinction, plain and simple. I guess my point is that if you want to participate in these morphic shifts, okay, you don't change morphic fields by fighting them, okay? Like the chaos. Do you know what I mean? You change them by embodying the new pattern consistently, okay? Not by preaching or convincing or performing, okay? Just living it. Fields respond to coherence. It's not going to respond to arguing, right? This is why, our choices that we're making right now are more important than we realize. You know, um every time, for instance, every time we pause instead of react. I had to do it earlier today. I had some really rude comments. People were saying some bad things to me. Um but every time we do these things, choose truth, over comfort, or we choose to stop feeding fear and align ourselves with love instead, we are strengthening a pattern that others will one day walk without ever knowing our names or who the fuck we are, you know? And to me, that's awesome, you know? Um, and that's just simply how evolution actually happens, you know? Morphic resonance, it's not about control. It's about remembering that nothing, you do or we do is isolated. Your embodiment matters. Your coherence matters. Your presence matters so much right now. And because the future isn't forced, it's patterned, you know? And that pattern is changing, like drastically for the better. I'm proud of that. I love you.